It's been a long stretch since we saw the Utah Utes take the gridiron, but it's finally going to come to an end when they travel out to Waco to take on the Baylor Bears. This Utah team is rolling right now, and it feels like a couple Utah football players are in for big Saturdays coming up.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first view and listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. My name is JT Wistrcill, and on today's show, I'm excited to be joined by Jordan Bianucci, the executive producer and co-host of Bryce and Bianucci on ESPN The Fan. We are going to talk about what's at stake for Utah this weekend and what do they need to do in order to, what does Utah need to do and what do their opponents need to do in order for this Utah team to have a better chance to go into the Big 12 title game. It's a lot, but we'll break it down. But we're going to start by previewing what we think is going to happen in terms of Utah individuals on both sides of the ball and how I think they're going to perform. And Jordan, let's just start with Devin Dampier. I think he's going to have a good day. I think Utah is going to have a good day because it's sometimes games can't be boiled down. Like this football game is a very nuanced thing, right? But other times you can just look at something and be like, Utah runs the ball really well. Baylor's abysmal at stopping it. Baylor is going to try and pack the box, but sometimes you're just not good enough when you're dealing with an NFL talent like Utah has. I think Utah runs the ball, and I think Devin Dampier has a really good day in this one. What I'm feeling for him numbers-wise is I think it is going to be pretty solid. I think he's going to throw for over 160. I don't think it's going to be crazy throwing numbers because I think he's going to rush for about 80, have 3 total touchdowns. How do you feel like Dampier is going to perform on Saturday? Coming off what I honestly could say was his best overall performance too.
I think he'll play really well. I think it's exactly what you said. This is a great matchup for Utah on paper. Baylor cannot stop the run, and Utah runs the ball better than anybody. I think Dampier, I don't know that he would welcome them packing the box, but if they do, I don't think he has a problem with it. That opens up things downfield for him to throw the football. I don't know that they're going to have to throw the football that much, JT. I think they can pack the box. And listen, their defense has been horrible all year long. They did play well against UCF. So we'll see if that carries over, but I don't see it happening. I think Dampier will play just fine. I don't think he's going to have to do a ton in this game. I think you give it to WAYSHAWN Parker and get some chunk yards from him.
Well, it's funny you mentioned WAYSHAWN Parker because I think he's going to have a pretty dang special day as well as the rest of the Utah backs. I have WAYSHAWN going over 100 in this one, 2 touchdowns. Kyle Whittingham has finally said he's started to separate himself. I feel like he's been separating himself since the start of the season. I don't know exactly what the reason was. He wasn't getting more of the carries. He's at like 7 yards per carry. Like, it's incredible what he's been able to do. So I have WAYSHAWN having a big day here. Naquai Rogers will chip in around 30 yards too. I think Bray will get his 20. And I honestly think we'll see Burt Ficklin at the end of this game chip in about 20 yards too. Maybe he'll even throw for a little bit too. But what have you thought of the Utah back situation? And do you feel like WAYSHAWN Parker is going to have a big game here coming up?
Yeah, I think he will. The thing I like about WAYSHAWN Parker is that I think he's the best back there that gives you the home run ball. You can give it to him and he'll have that 25, 30-yard possibility. But it's not, they are deep at that position. But I think WAYSHAWN has a huge game. I just don't think, and listen, it's WAYSHAWN, he's great, but also just Baylor can't stop the run. And now you're facing, like you said, the best offensive line they've seen all season. And I don't see it changing for Baylor. But I mean, the only thing that could, and we can get into this, but I think the only thing that could possibly go wrong for Utah is just if they turn the ball over. You give a team like Baylor chances, they have a good offense. But no, I see WAYSHAWN having a big day.
I totally agree with that. I think, and Dampier, even against Cincinnati, right? He did throw a pick. So that's the one thing with him. He's gotten much better ball security wise, and I should say more so preventing interceptions this year compared to last year, but he has turned it over at times. So he's going to have to be smart with the football. Thankfully, Jason Beck has done a really good job of scheming guys up, helping them get open because it's not the most talented group of receivers. Although Ryan Davis is pretty dang good. And I still think he will make some plays in this one because of how much Baylor's going to sell out to stop the run. I do believe Utah will get some nice plays through the air. I, of course, have Utah's by far wide receiver one from a production standpoint. Ryan Davis having a good day. I think Dallin Bentley chips in as well. Solid 30 yards for him. I have Davis going for about 80. I actually could see Larry Simmons getting a little more involved this week, about 35 yards for him. He's kind of been one catch a game and then disappear. I'd love to see him be 2 or 3 this week coming up. And I think he'll get in the end zone too, which he hasn't done in a little bit now. Or actually he might've done it against Cincinnati. He did Colorado. And then I have JJ Buchanan getting in 2 for 20 yards. I think Utah, they know he's their best jump ball receiver. Just throw it up to JJ Buchanan. which is crazy. We're talking about that for a true freshman who was converted to tight end after being a wide receiver and safety in high school, that he's their best option there. But I do think Utah gets just enough from the passing game. It's kind of been the case all year, Jordan. And I like that some of these guys are starting to settle into these roles, even though I'd still love another wide receiver to really pop at some point this year.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Utah gets out to a fast start. I don't know that those guys will get those numbers just because they'll keep it on the ground. They'll just bleed that clock out. So I think if you're a Utah fan, that's what you're hoping for, is that maybe your receivers don't have big time numbers in this game because it means you're dominating on the ground.
Do you think so? I said Dampier at 160 passing yards. Like, what would you put him at? What do you think will be those numbers? Because as you said, like, I think he's going to go over 100. But you're right. Maybe it is even a 120, which would be crazy. But it's possible because of, like what we said, Baylor allows 167 yards on the ground. Utah rushes for over 260.
I'll say 150, but I don't want to underestimate what a struggle it's been for Baylor on the ground. I mean, Utah could. I don't want to get overconfident for Utah, but they could really dominate and they should on the ground, frankly, in this game. So I can see this where they're running wild in the first and second quarter, and as you mentioned, they bring in Bert Ficklin. He runs the ball well. I'll take the under on the 150, but I think Utah wins big in this game.
That's the interesting thing about this game is you look at this Baylor team and you're like, well, the defense isn't great, but the offense, like there's some good things going there. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But the other thing, Jordan, just the more I talk to people in Waco this week who've come on my show, the vibes down there are bad. Like whether it's this whole thing with Michael Trigg going on there and their athletic director, or just Dave Aranda being on this hot seat. Like, sure, you beat a UCF, but you just got drubbed on the road at Cincinnati before that. They lost by 20 to a Bearcats team that, of course, Utah just demolished. They played better at home, but also the fan base is kind of checking out of the season, so I don't expect it to be a crazy crowd there. It just feels like things are going south for Baylor outside of even just the football product on the field. This feels like it's an athletic department in a little bit of disarray, and it's one of the things I think we will see that bleed out onto the field.
Yeah, and Bryce and I have been talking about this. We've been asking the question: is Dave Aranda, is he coaching for his job, or has that ship sailed? Is he already going to be gone next year? Because in games like this, and I'll mention it again, if Baylor gets down early, it's hard not to quit in a game like this because it's already demoralizing facing a really good offensive line like Utah's. It's even more so when it's been a season like this. Now, again, like you mentioned, they played well against UCF, so maybe they're able to cobble together some momentum from that. But yeah, it's tough sledding, and it's coming from all angles down there right now.
It is. And then they have some players in the secondary I like, but like we said, if they just can't stop the run, and it's just, this is a Utah team reminder, like their last two opponents, they've beaten like 98-21 or something like that. I mean, it's crazy how the level of dominance this Utah team is displayed, and what they do dominant, Baylor is just bad at it. We're not trying to just make it about one thing, but it's just not going in their way. This is a real quick conversation before we hop into the other side of the ball. If you were Baylor, would you fire Dave Aranda? I think logically you might be like, well, maybe because they're not doing great. But then I also pause because I go, in a normal coaching carousel, maybe I might give it a little bit of pause in this one because I just don't know if it's worth trying to get is Baylor going to be like the 8th or 10th best job open, which is crazy because a lot of times a P4 job would be a top 5, but not this year. So if I was them, I'd still probably fire him. But where are you at, Jordan?
I probably would, but you're right, because I would argue it's not even the best job opening in the Big 12. That's probably Oklahoma State. And so it would give me, I'm with you. I'm glad I'm not in the position where I have to make that call. He's been there for 6 years. He hasn't been very good, but it hasn't been a train wreck the entire time. That's a great question, JT. I don't know, but I would still lean yes.
Because we were talking on our Big 12 squad show that our TCU host, Darren Gray, does a great job. He brought up how, TCU should maybe thinking about Sonny Dykes. But what I voiced was if, and maybe a normal year, if it was like, oh, we got a really good candidate and it might be time to get Sonny Dykes out there. TCU, same thing. Like they are not probably a top 6 job in this hiring cycle right now. So is it worth firing Sonny Dykes for the buyout and getting what would be the 6th best candidate on the market? I'd say no to that. And I'm really curious to see what a lot of these Big 12 teams end up doing. But I feel very confident that the Utah defense is going to have a big weekend coming up. Which Utah players are going off, and can Sawyer Robertson, because he's really good at throwing the football, make this one a game? That's what we're going to talk about in a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Utah Utes, and a lot of times we talk about a past performance, but I'm going to talk about who I think is going to have a big day this coming weekend, and that's WAYSHAWN PARKER. I think he's going to just churn out big plays on the ground. I think he's not going to get touched until he's about 3 or 4 yards down the field, so that's going to help him too. I think WAYSHAWN's going to have a big day and build on what was a great performance last week, because he's putting together a streak. And just like WAYSHAWN PARKER is going to get rolling this weekend for the Utah Utes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every time you order. Stack it up all season and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. This promo ends November 18th. So make sure you act now and get your streak rolling. Baylor offensively does throw the ball at a very high level, Jordan. The problem is this Utah defense is also playing at a very high level. And Baylor, you could argue they have the best collection of skill position talent. I don't think it's a Jordan Tyson, a Chase Roberts, but the 2 and the 3, and especially like a Michael Trigg, like that's really good. They have a nice back as well. And I do believe Sawyer's the best QB they've seen so far, hence him being up there for the nation lead in passing yards. But there's a weakness for Baylor, and the offensive line just has not been as impressive this year. So I do think Baylor will put some drives together with how much man coverage Utah likes to play. I see Baylor hitting some of those plays. The problem is I think the protection is going to break down, and Sawyer has also thrown a fair amount of picks this year. So while I see Baylor staying in this game, I don't think they're going to get embarrassed in this one. I do see Utah eventually separating, because I think the protection and just the crazy crap that Morgan Scalley can come up with, especially off a bye week, is going to be too much for Baylor's offensive line to handle.
Yeah, I think John Henry Daly has a big game. I see him in the backfield early getting some hits on Sawyer. Listen, Baylor has not seen they haven't seen an offensive line like this. They haven't seen a D line like this either this year. And so I see Utah getting to him, putting some hits on him, and forcing him into some smaller windows downfield, just hurrying him up a little bit, and making him uncomfortable. That's the name of the game, right? And I think Utah will do that in this game. It'll be interesting to see if Baylor tries to get the ball out early to counteract that. That's the one thing. If they can get the ball to those skill guys in space, that may open up some things. But otherwise, I see that Utah D-line having a big day.
Michael Trigg, Josh Cameron, Ashton Hawkins, Cole Wilson all have over 400 yards receiving, which is crazy because Utah has one guy who has over 400 yards receiving on the season. So they got a lot of talented options. What nice for Utah though, Jordan, is I can't believe how good this defensive backfield has been. And there's been I've seen a lot of posts this week about how Cameron Calhoun hasn't been able to do a ton at Alabama this season. It's crazy that Utah hasn't missed him more. I was concerned about this cornerback room coming into the year. Blake Cotton has been exceptional. I thought he'd be good. He's been better than I thought. Elijah Scooby Davis has been remarkable. Even as Smith Snowden, he got burned for 1 touchdown. If that's the price we pay for Brennan Sorsby, 11 for 33, 1 big play because Smith Snowden was a little slow to move, I'm okay with that. And Teo Johnson's improved his play. Jackson Benny settled in nicely at safety. This is a really good secondary. And like you said too, Jordan, they have not seen a defensive line like Utah. Cincinnati might be the second best D-line they've seen. They lost that game by 20. So I just love the way this Utah defensive backfield is playing. And Baylor's wide receiver, their passing game, they'll get theirs. But I think Utah's in a position to win a lot of those one-on-ones too.
I do. I've been impressed with Utah on the back end. That's the thing with the Brennan Sorsby, just the domination in that game was so impressive. And that's what makes me really confident going up against Sawyer. Because like you said, they'll have some big plays, but I think Utah will limit it. And I do think Utah comes up with a couple big turnovers in this game that changes things. But I think it all starts with that D line. You put pressure and make him uncomfortable, you're going to force him into some bad spots. It'll be interesting to see because that's the thing is Baylor, again, they haven't seen a D coordinator like Morgan Scalley yet and the things he dials up. So we saw what that did to Sorsby, and I think we'll see it again this week. Maybe not to that degree, but Utah's defense will be successful, I think.
Would you agree, though, this is the best quarterback that Utah's seen so far this year? Or would you go with Sorsby? And please don't say Bear.
It's
I've
Bear
seen
Bachmeyer.
I've seen people start to push that, and I like Bear, but like QB success and team success are two different things. Just because the team is doing really well doesn't mean he's the best QB. And I just think it's interesting that I've seen that get tossed around that Bear is like the best QB in this conference. And I like Bear. He's proved me wrong, but the best QB, I just think that's way too far right now.
No, he's proved me wrong too. He's been great for a
Yeah.
freshman. He's been fantastic for a freshman. I think no, this will be the best quarterback that Utah's faced. I think Sorsby's up there, but I'll take Sawyer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Sawyer just makes a lot of plays. He's right up there for the nation lead in passing yards too. He can make a lot of things happen. I mean, 2,700 yards here, 26 touchdowns, although he has been sacked 16 times in those 7 interceptions. So that's what leads Jordan to believe there's going to be turnovers. And guess what? I feel the same way. I think Sawyer will throw for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I actually think he's going to throw 2 picks in this one. I also think you mentioned John Henry Daly. I think he's getting home for a strip sack in this game. I think he's going to force the ball out this one. And I think Sawyer will throw 1 pick when it's still a game. And I think late in this game, I do think this will turn into a blowout. I said on my show yesterday, I'm actually going 38-17. I don't think like it'll be from the jump, but I just think consistently, like Orion Phillips, like I think we'll call his name like once in each half, maybe. I'm expecting Utah to have that much success on the ground, and that is consistent with what they've done against teams that stop the run better than a Baylor even. So I think Utah has a day defensively. I think, like I said, I think John Henry Daly gets a sack, a strip sack, also 2 for him. Fano gets a sack. I'll go Lander on a blitz to get home, so 4 sacks in total there. Picks, I'll go Teo Johnson, Jackson Benny too. But how do you see the overall matchup going for this Baylor offense against the Utah defense? Because I do think it's going to be one that Utah ends up winning more than they lose, even if Baylor will make some plays.
Baylor will make plays, and you said something important. I think they will wear down, and I think that's true on both sides of the ball in the trenches. I think the defensive line over the course of the game will wear middle of the third quarter. That Baylor offensive line is going to wear down, and you're going to see some guys get free and take some hit Sawyer in the backfield. I see the same thing happen on the offensive line. I agree with you about Lander Barton. I had him with a sack as well. I think even look, Lander Barton, he may drop back into coverage. Maybe he comes up with a pick as well.
I like it. I could absolutely see it. Looking underneath, gets hit as he throws and turns it over there too. This Utah team's playing so well. Jordan, I can't believe we're starting to get to the end of the year, and I'm looking back at like preseason predictions. It was like I remember I was going back and forth between 9-3, 10-2, and I was like, oh, I might end up being right about that when I lean 10-2. What's crazy is I had Utah actually losing this Baylor game at the beginning of the year. And honestly, if you would have told me Utah would lose any of the number of these games they had coming up at the start of the year, I would have been like, yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a pretty good Kansas team. I think they'll bounce back. I think Kansas State's one of the 4 best teams in the Big 12. And you could argue these 3 teams, also TCU can get featured in this too, are the most disappointing teams in the conference. It's crazy how different this stretch of the schedule looks for Utah versus the start of the year.
It is. This was absolutely, when I looked at the schedule, I thought this was the 2nd toughest road game of the year after probably BYU. And we had Ari Temkin on the show earlier today. Before he picked Baylor to win the Big 12. And he just, as you were mentioning, we were talking about, it wasn't. They have great skill guys. And I thought this could have been a game along with the Texas Tech game that would decide who goes to Arlington. And it still will play a part in that. But Baylor has been massively disappointing. And it goes back to our conversation about Aranda. I think that's what will get him fired. It's just the expectations were here. And now we're talking right now about Baylor getting to a bowl game.
He was the defensive coordinator on the LSU team that won a title, and they have an abysmal defense in Waco. That's where it's just interesting. Some places it just doesn't work, and I still think he's a good coach, but also some guys just aren't always the greatest head coaches, and it feels like he's destined to be a better coordinator than anything else. And you talked about how he already thought Baylor was going to the Big 12 title game. I was pounding the table for Baylor to be ranked coming into this year, and like as soon as they lost to Auburn, I was like, yeah, I was wrong. Like I felt like almost right away because they nearly dropped the SMU game the week after. The funny thing is, like, if we do transitive property, Baylor could beat Notre Dame. Like that way, you connect all the dots of SMU, Miami, like all these ones in between too. So it's funny. It's going to be an interesting game. Like I said, I gave my prediction for Utah to win big in this one, 38-17. What are you going with, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm going to go Utah 35-14 in this one. Now, listen, I don't want to get overhyped. If Devin Dampier makes a couple of bad throws, if he gets knocked around and isn't 100% in the second half, this could be a competitive game. But I think coming off the bye, I'm confident in Utah going down there and taking care of business. Just again, you go back to the trenches. I think that's what will dominate the game for Utah. So yeah, 35-14, I'm going Utes.
I like it. I mean, we're almost the same. Literally just like, what, 3 off basically? Or 2
Yeah,
off on
yeah.
one, 3
Well,
on the other?
what's crazy is I'm trying to remember what the over under is. Vegas, this is going to be a high scoring game. They had the over under at in the mid 50s, I think
Yeah.
52 to 55. And so there will be points scored here, but you know what? Now you're making me rethink it, JT, because I'm going Baylor's offense. They are pretty good. Will they score more than 14? If Utah holds Baylor to 14 points, I know Baylor's not very good. That's impressive, and
Yes.
I'll stick with it.
But I'll say too, like Cincinnati held them to 20. So I think
Yeah.
Utah defense is better. We're saying just a little bit less. And that's what'll be interesting to see what ends up playing out here. Baylor can make this a game. We're both saying that. But we also are looking at this like, hey, it's just the style that each team plays, what they're good at, what they're not. And both teams just trending in opposite directions with very different things up for grabs. Feels like this one could very well end up getting out of hand, which is very good for Utah. And Utah needs some help if they want to make the Big 12 title game. Who do you need to be rooting for this weekend? If you want to get the Utah Utes to Arlington, we're going to do our best to break it down for you. But first, this episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers 300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, NHL, college football, college basketball, or the NFL. The FanDuel has you covered for all of your sports betting action. Once again, new customers, 300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins with FanDuel. We both have the Utah Utes covering, but the Utah Utes want not just to cover because they do need to keep adding style points. This committee values style points. It's why BYU crumbled, because BYU, you look at their record, 8-1, nice. How they've gotten there, a lot of late comebacks against not great teams. That's why you fall. So if Utah does not impress against Waco, Miami and Vandy could jump them. Like right away, that could happen. So Utah needs to win and take care of business here. But they also, if they want to get to the Big 12 title game, where if they could just win the conference, easier said than done with how good Tech looks, they can just get in that way. But they do need things to go their way. I think the main things to lose for this week is you would really like a Cincinnati to suffer their second loss to Arizona, and a BYU loss to TCU would also help. I don't know how likely either of those are. I actually will say I think Cincinnati could lose again. And I think that's a Cincinnati team right now. I think they got a good shot to beat BYU the following week. But Cincinnati and BYU, I just don't see either one of them as only one loss regular season Big 12 teams. I think that second loss is coming up here, Jordan, but that's the main thing I'm looking for if I'm a Utah fan here. What are you looking for either this week to go in Utah's favor to get them to Arlington or the next few weeks? Because it is quite the chaotic cycle that needs to go the Utes way.
It does. I'm with you. I think Arizona can beat Cincinnati. I don't think BYU is going to lose at home to TCU coming off that loss. I don't know that Cincinnati BYU game will be really interesting. BYU has to go on the road. Again, the freshman quarterback didn't perform great in a road test against Texas Tech. It is Texas Tech. That's a phenomenal football team. This week it's easy. You're cheering for TCU, you're cheering for Arizona, and then you want Cincinnati to beat BYU, from what I understand. It gets real confusing, but that's what you need. You've beaten Cincinnati, you have the tiebreaker. And I think that can happen. It's a good thing that game's in Cincy. I would lean BYU right now in that game because I think they have the same formula that Utah had to beat Cincinnati, and that's that they can run the football, assuming LJ Martin's fairly healthy, and they have a pretty good D line. So I'd lean BYU in that game, but that's what you're rooting for at least right now.
Yeah, it's nice. A couple of things too. Like, I guess another team that we do need to lose the second game is Houston. But as I covered it earlier, Jordan, don't you agree? I just don't see Houston as like winning out of their Big 12 schedule. That loss to West Virginia, that was just like you just started to prove everyone wrong. We were all doubting you, and then you go beat Arizona State, and we're like, okay, clap, clap, clap. Like, good for you guys. You got the win there. And then you fumble it to a West Virginia team. Like, you squander that one. I just don't buy Houston as much. And obviously, Arizona State is another one that is, I guess, technically in this, but with no Sam Levitt, I just don't see them going the rest of the distance too. So I just feel like it really is going to come down to a Utah, a BYU, a Tech, and honestly, just because they even have one loss right now, even if I view them as clearly the fourth best team and not one of the top three, I think Cincinnati's still in this, right?
Yeah, Cincinnati's still in it. I think that you want a Houston. I'm with you on Houston. I was the jury was out, and then they lose that game to West Virginia. I think they go down at least one more time this year, maybe twice. Um, I think Cincinnati's your best bet to beat BYU. If that doesn't happen, you're in trouble. BYU then has UCF at home the last week. I don't know who Cincinnati has off the top of my head that last week, but here's what you want. You want BYU coming out of this TCU game this week a little banged up, not totally healthy, and then we'll see if that Cincinnati offense can make some things happen against a BYU defense on the back end. It's tough. We're not used to saying this. BYU has a really good secondary, a quick, athletic, good secondary, and that hasn't traditionally been true with this team. So I would still lean BYU there. But man, JT, it's the Big 12 we were just talking about before the season. We thought Baylor, this would be a marquee game with Utah. Every time I say, oh, this is going to happen, something weird happens in the Big 12. We don't know, but Utah definitely has a shot. And one other real quick, even if Utah doesn't get to the Big 12 championship game, if they win and they win big in these games, they still have a shot to sneak in there because BYU ain't beating Texas Tech in that championship game again. There's just that Texas, and that's less about BYU and more how good Texas Tech is. I think Utah can still, depending on what happens with Oklahoma and Texas and Notre Dame, slide in there without even getting to Arlington possible.
Do you feel the same way if Utah saw Tech in the Big 12 title game?
I don't. I would still pick Tech in that game, but Utah played Texas Tech tougher than BYU did. The score didn't really indicate it, but that was a close game for 3.5 quarters. BYU can beat Texas Tech, but it wasn't close. They just weren't competitive. So I don't see it happening. I would take Tech over Utah, but it would be a close game, and that's the team McGuire would rather not see if he had to choose an opponent in the title game. Don't get me wrong, he's not losing sleep over facing anybody because Texas Tech's good, but I think he wants to see Utah least of all those teams.
Baron Morton is not 100%. We see that right now. Baron Morton did not play very well against Utah. They hit the one big pass play early, and that was their lone touchdown until Will Hammond came in the game. And obviously if they were play again, unfortunately, because we want Will Hammond out there, he's a good player if that was who was called upon, but Will Hammond, they wouldn't have packages. They could roll him out there too. So it'd be interesting to see what happened in that matchup. But I do view Utah as, I think right now, Utah is a better team than BYU. BYU has to be ranked above them because they have the head-to-head win and they're only a 1-loss different. But I'm not going to be mad, Jordan, if I will give TCU honestly, I will. I get myself in trouble when I do percentages on this show, as we all know from my past. But I actually think TCU has a 30% chance to upset BYU this week. I think Josh Hoover, anytime you have the best quarterback on the field, we saw last year BYU drop one at home to a Kansas team they were clearly better than. I could see it happening in this one too. I expect BYU to win, but I'm not ruling it out that they find a way to lose. So I guess two-parter. What are your TCU upset chances? And then who's the best team in the state of Utah right now?
I give TCU a 25% chance to knock off BYU. I think if you get Bachmeier under some pressure and he throws a couple picks, it can happen. I'm like you. I'm taking BYU in that game right now. I mean, Utah's playing better than BYU right now. It kills if you're a Utah fan. It just kills you because you go back to Utah's loss to BYU, and it's a couple of productive trips in the red zone, and we're having a different conversation right now. I think Utah's a little better right now than BYU, but it's a total coin flip. Those teams are so evenly matched that I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. It's too bad they won't match up for a rematch in the Big 12 title game because that would be fascinating to me. Even Texas Tech's the best team out of all those three, but that matchup would be the most fun.
It would be so much fun. It's just like, could Utah really lose 4 to them? But can Wick get over his kind of BYU problem that he has right now? It would be absolutely fascinating to see. Also, you asked about, how about TCU's last 3 games here? Baylor, Houston, Cincinnati. If you're a Utah fan, you love the TCU Horned Frogs because this is a team that has a chance to help you get to Arlington, and that's all you can ask for at this point in the year. Jordan, really appreciate you making the time coming on, man. Please let everyone know where they can follow and find more of your work at.
You can hear the show, Bryson Bianucci, every day, 7 to 10 on ESPN The Fan. That is 103.9 and 98.3 FM. And then you can follow me at Jordan Bianucci on Twitter. Thanks so much, JT.
Appreciate you coming on, Jordan. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Utes. We will be back with you sometime after the game, whether that's a Sunday. We'll see. Won't be able to go live right away after this one, more than likely. Slim chance of live, but there's some things going on. But anyways, we will get to you at some point, a post-game recap, and look forward to breaking down everything that happens. Utah versus Baylor, just a 24, not even 24 hours at this point, depending on the time you're listening to this, away from kickoff. It'll get underway, and we'll see you after the game at some point.